be honest. Um,
Recording in progress.
I think Bruce is online.
Bruce, can you hear us, sir?
Are you muted? Yeah, I asked him about muted. He's gonna have to. There you go, sir.
Can y'all hear me now?
Sir.
Who's on
Are you still there?
That's Chairman.
Okay. All right, well, good morning. I think we have a quorum, so welcome everyone, and I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Yes, we can just start with introductions. We'll start with the board and then I'll catch the two that are on Zoom at the end, so. Reed.
I'm Nathan Reed, farm in Eastern Arkansas, Mariana. I'm a farmer at large position.
Travis Center from Wilson, Arkansas, representing farmers at large.
Nathan Slayton, representing the University of Arkansas Division of Agriculture.
Matt Miles from McGee, Arkansas, representing the farmer.
Reynold Meyer from Eudora, Arkansas, representing cattlemen.
David Gamble, Mississippi County, a farmer representing wheat and feed.
Sam Stuckey, Clarkdale, Crittenden County, representing cotton.
Rob. Hey Bruce, can you hear us? Can you introduce yourself?
I'm Bruce Alford, Lafayette County, represent Forage.
Dr. Cord.
I'm Ken Korth, representing University of Arkansas Division of Agriculture. I'm in Fayetteville.
And I'm Matthew Marsh from Little Rock, representing Arkansas Rice Growers. With a small crowd, we'll go ahead and introduce the audience if you don't mind. Mike.
Michael Bynum, Arkansas Department of Agriculture. Andrew Grubmeyer with the Agricultural Council of Arkansas.
Mike Stage, Arkansas Department of Agriculture. So I'm Arkansas Department of Agriculture.
David Ford, Arkansas Department of Agriculture.
Randy Carroll, Arkansas Farm Bureau.
I'm Brandon Stevens, I'm farming in Cherry Valley.
Jason McGee, farming across in Poinsett County, Arkansas.
Amanda Story and her consulting, represent Bayer.
Hi, Davis, Senator John Bozeman's office.
Mark Hartz, representing the Arkansas Agricultural Aviation Association.
Caleb Wall, Morris County Seed Company.
Dean Wall, farming grain in Lawrence County.
Keith Stokes, Centric Cotton's office.
Amy Lyman, Arkansas Department of Agriculture.
Trey Davis, Bear Cross Science. Rick Moore, Walker Cross County.
Department of Agriculture. Cynthia Edwards, Department of Agriculture.
Wes Ward, Department of Agriculture. Russ Summers, Department of Agriculture. Tim Chester, Department of Agriculture.
Brian Terry, Department of Agriculture.
Nick Solomon, Department of Agriculture.
I'm Mary Podmore.
Frank Reynolds, Department of Agriculture.
Lee Gibson, Department of Agriculture.
Susie Nichols, Department of Agriculture.
Well, thank you, and again, welcome everybody, and thanks for being here this morning. Start with the agenda. The first thing we're to consider the minutes of the August 12th board meeting. I think we've had a chance to look over them. Anybody have any amendments or questions or comments on the minutes of the August 12th?
Move, we accept them.
Second.
Everybody, Mr. Meyer, second by Mr. Stuckey, to accept the minutes. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Next, we got the pest control section. Scott, I guess you're doing some exam results.
Yes, sir, you should. I'll come up here to. Well, ask each staff member whenever you're on deck, if you don't mind, come up here and holding that helps with the Zoom and recording. So you all should have it in your, these are the pest control exams for the months of August through November. This is pretty much just standard business.
Hold on, you gotta turn that on.
Or-
I'm sorry.
Okay,
Sorry.
so again, this is just pretty much standard business. Every quarter, the board approves pest control minutes, or excuse me, the pest control examination results from the previous few months. If anybody has any questions, myself or Seth would be glad to answer them for you.
What's the board's action on the, pest control?
Easy, accepted. I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Meyer, second by Mr. Gamble, accept the exam result. Any discussion? Yeah, one question. Scott, is this a normal fail rate for classing up scores? Seems like very few people are passing.
It is, and if Seth can correct me, when you are looking at the basic core exam, we have a pretty high pass rate there, but when you're looking at class specific, it goes down quite a bit. What's your pass overall, Seth, about?
We're about 50, I mean, between 40 and 60% is where our pass rate is at.
Okay. Yeah, this one just struck me as very few. I didn't know if that was normal. We changed something or what.
It's pretty normal.
Okay.
It's class specific exams are pretty tough.
Are we doing that? Are those online now? If we get,
There is an online, but I guess we do on in-house and online.
thank you. Got a motion second to accept the exam results. All those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. All right, we've got some pest control enforcement actions next. It's set on the present those.
And you'll have those in front of you. I'll just give a brief synopsis of each of them. Here on the case file 23.023, the resolution of pest control incident with the respondents, Shelter Lawn Care, Kevin Pope, the licensed operator, Danny Watson, being the registered agent. Pope Lawn Care performed an ornamental tree care pest control job on August 31st. And the agents, James Watson, made an application inconsistent with the product label of the pesticide they were applying. That could have resulted in human exposure / animal exposure to a pesticide. The license holder representative, Kevin Pope, agreed to the following. The agent, James Watson, for making a pesticide application inconsistent with the product that was at major level specific J, $300 civil bill. And the total of $300, the amount of civil penalty that the board has approved the resolution of pest control agreement. And all the respondents will be jointly and separately liable. Any questions about that? I gave a brief synopsis.
We had a chance to look through it. Do we need to approve these one at a time or?
I think one at a time, there's 1, 2, 3.
There's 3 of them.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. What's the board's action on the, where's the number on it?
I'm ready to approve the phone. Second.
Moved by Mr. Stuckey, second by Colonel Meyer to approve the Pope Lawn Care resolution. Any discussion? Those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
The next one is a resolution agreement with respondents Fairway Lawns, John Carr, the licensed operator, and Derek Smith, the registered agent. Fairway Lawns performed an ornamental tree and pest control job on September 19th, 2022, and the agent Derek Smith made an application consistent with the product label of the pesticide they were applying that could have resulted in a human exposure / animal exposure to a pesticide. The license holder representative John Carr agreed to the following. Agent Derek Smith for making pesticides applications inconsistent with the product label as a major level offense, receiving a civil penalty of $300. And a total of $300 will be, if the board does approve the resolution. Of pest control and student to respond will be going in several.
That was board's action on the Fairway Lawns resolution.
Motion to accept. Second.
Moved by Mr. Miles, second by Mr. Meyer to accept the Fairway Lawns resolution agreement. Any discussion?
Are these just, how are these checked? Is it somebody identifying these people? Or is it just a spot check? Or
Some of them are through routine inspections, like we'll catch them out in the field. These. Just to make sure I'm not incorrect in this. One of these was reported, and
it's all
reported and investigated from the field inspector. One, or actually another company, saw them doing wrong. Pictures of their agents. We confronted them, did an investigation of that. The other one was from us actually going out into the field and seeing them doing it incorrectly. And then the other one was, concerned citizen calling, contacting us.
Any more questions or discussion? We got a motion second. Those in favor? Signal by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Right, and the last one I have for you today, these resolution agreements, it's against respondents, critters, pest control, Ralph Webb, licensed operator, Seth Johnson, and David Whipple, which are both resident agents. Critters Pest Control on the household pest and drug control job on October 10th, 2022, and both agents made applications and consistent with the product label pesticide line with the help of any human exposure, animal exposure to a pesticide. The license holder representative Ralph Webb agrees to the following. The license holder a civil penalty for agents making pesticide applications consistent with the product label as a major level of offense. The licensed operator agrees to the licensed operator to receive a $300 civil penalty for agents making applications inconsistent with the product as a major level offense. And then agents Seth Johnson and David Whipple each for received a civil penalty of $300 for making pesticides inconsistent with the product label. A total of $1,200 is the total amount of civil penalty. The board does approve the resolution of pest control incidents that all the respondents in several held liable in court.
Hey, what's the board's action on the critter getters control resolution agreement?
Move we accept it. Second.
Moved by Mr. Gamble, second by Mr. Miles to accept the resolution agreement. Any discussion? Question? Those in favor, signal by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Oh, thanks, Seth. Okay, the next on the agenda, we've got the pesticide section. Susie's got some enforcement action for it.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If you look at attachment 4A, you have a spreadsheet and you also have a Word document with more details behind it. What we typically do is I have a vote on these in groups. If you need to recuse yourself or need more information on any of them, just stop me and I can go into more detail. But Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do is number 1 through 16. Just have the board vote on these. These are all warning letters that were not contested.
You know, it's board's action on the one.
Motion to accept 16 for the warning letter. I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Stuckey, second by Mr. Reed, to accept the warning letters. Any discussion or questions on those? Hearing none, those in favor of accepting the warning letters, signal by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
We're gonna move on to items 17 through 23. These are signed consent agreements that involve a civil penalty. The alleged violators signed the consent agreements. These were not contested. Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask the board to vote on items 17 through 23. If you have any questions again, just feel free to ask.
Board's action on the signed consent agreements.
Maybe we accept 17 through 23 on the signed consent agreement.
I'll second.
Moved by Mr. Stuckey, second by Mr. Center. To accept the signed consent agreements. Any questions or comments on those? Hearing none, those in favor, say them saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, the next section is number 24 through 28, and these are egregious eligible violations. These were hand delivered to the individuals after attempts to mail by certified mail. We couldn't get a signature. Some came back with COVID on it, so we made an extra attempt to hand deliver these. Once we hand delivered these consent agreements, we did not hear anything from the alleged violators. The recommendation was at the midpoint of the $25,000 fine. Turned over to the board at this point for numbers 24 through 28.
Yeah, what's the board's actions on the delivered consent agreements? I guess no response.
These were hand delivered. They got them.
And Mr. Bynum.
And it was the consent agreements and the notices of violation that time.
Yes,
Yeah, so
And these are from 20, sorry,
yes.
2020.
So the unsigned agreements, they never sent them back in, signed.
Oh, they were delivered and no response.
No response.
Okay.
Correct.
Yeah, you know, in the past, I think we've, no responses. Agreement, I think that's kind of what it said in the, agreement that we delivered, right? Yeah.
Well, this is kind of new territory. Michael may have to chime in, but like I said, we did try to mail them regular mail, certified mail, and then our inspectors hand delivered.
Yeah, I'll speak up to that. So in the past, the board has approved civil penalties where we received no response after a certified mail and a regular mail and a certain amount of time. Since then, we've started hand delivering when we don't get a response. Just to go the extra effort to give the person an opportunity to respond. So these were hand delivered, no response.
And we're talking about 24 through 27 on these.
And
28.
28.
And 28. Well, they just had,
24 through 27 are the same response.
I understand, they had different headings. This 28 had no response after 30 days, and this first one just said hand delivery. So I wanted to be clear.
Was egregious and non-egregious, I guess, is the difference.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
It just, one of them didn't say no response, so I wasn't sure.
And we can handle 24 through 27 as one.
Yes, I'm sorry about that.
But they had the opportunity for due process and chose not to.
Correct.
Something you,
That's why the extra effort with the hand delivery. So, I mean, we've done everything we can, to give them the opportunity to respond. So,
And I think we've shown and if you respond and work
Yeah.
with us, I think we've been.
we do have a history of settling these if you respond. Yes, sir. Pretty,
We've been basically cutting them down to 25% if they're cooperative and respond, and it's their first offense.
and cut them down even more.
Yeah, but I'm just saying, we cut them in half and then almost half again
And yes, sir.
if they do everything we've asked. I move we go ahead with these. At
This
least,
is
yeah,
24 through 27, again, my apologies. for asking.
24 through 27, and then I'd make the same motion on 28.
We have a second.
I'll second.
Got a motion second to accept items 24 through 28. Any further discussion? Those in favor, signal saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed. Motion carried. That takes care of our enforcement actions. I guess you got any other reports?
I just wanted to give the board an update on the abandoned pesticide collection program. We just had our fall collection event, we typically have these in the fall and the spring, and this fall collection event was 361,266 pounds. This program has now removed approximately 5.8 million pounds of pesticides from Arkansas. This is free. It's agriculture pesticide. It's anonymous. None of these sign-up sheets go through us. Brandy Reynolds is over this program. She's right there, for y'all who don't know her. Just wanted to give y'all an update. This program has really grown and become very popular. We increased the fee. I think the board did. That was in the spring or summer, so hopefully we'll be able to collect even more. Expand.
It's probably my fault, but the dates and the location slipped up on me where I didn't, and there was not a county close. Will you advise everybody that?
What we'll do, the next one will probably be in March or April. We've got some counties slated to go to. We're gonna look at funding to see if we can add more. There was talk of actually doing a county in Northeast Arkansas. Because we try to rotate to the entire state. Sometimes we get the agriculture areas a little more often. You know what area of the state we're going to now, Brandy?
We're back in the southwest.
Southwest, but we are looking at a satellite location, possibly in East Arkansas, but we have to look at funding before we can settle on that.
Yeah,
What we can do is when we get ready to announce those counties, we can start emailing that to the board. It goes out in multiple press releases, but we can't email it to you
I
guys.
had two farmers call me and asked me about abandoned pesticide, and I didn't know when.
Don't- Yeah, we aim for March or April.
Okay.
So I can keep y'all updated and so definitely get that email out to y'all.
Great program.
And encourage people to fill out a form, because that's how we prepare for how much is coming. It's anonymous. It just helps us prepare better.
You do that online prior to the thing, or how does it?
Farm Bureau assists us and the county agents, because they provide forms to fill out anonymously. It's basically just approximately what you have. You don't have to put your name on it. Sorry.
I have one quick question, not about that, and it really doesn't affect any decision we've made, but I don't want you to think I'm not paying attention to what you send us. On this second and third of the signed consent agreements on the major that we approved, I noticed, and I assume he just turned it back in, Mr. Tommy Keeling bought some stuff that had lost its registration to Virginia that had gone out in 20, but he bought it in early 21. I assume he didn't know he was doing it wrong, so we didn't do anything on him.
Which number are you at?
Well, this would be 17 and 175, CF 20. I'm assuming that we didn't say anything to him. He just said, oh, yeah, I can turn that back into you, because he didn't know that it lost its registration. He thought it might have.
We Tri-County Farm.
It's the Tri-County sold.
That's right. I'm saying, so the other half of that, like on the first Tri-County sold Marty,
They sold twice to two, once to one individual and once to another individual.
And the individual did not get a violation.
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
It just so happened that Marty Eustace had some other violations for record keeping. Those were not associated necessarily with this site.
Correct.
Okay, all right. I just thought I'd see.
I assume that's when y'all discovered that it was not registered, was when you had the violation. It'd be pretty hard to catch.
Inspection in.
When we do an investigation, we look at licensing, we look at training, and then start reading the massive 100-page list. Any other questions?
You did say on the collection site, y'all move them around the state, so
Yeah.
I guess like Southeast Arkansas will get one eventually.
Yes.
Okay.
And on the increased funding, is that giving us opportunity to go to more places? Or is it-
Don't know yet. It's just really the increase started in the middle of our registration season, so we'll really see it actually starting now.
When it's gonna affect July 1st fiscal year, so we're just now renewing registration for 2023 calendar.
So there's more money opportunity. We can.
We're just having a lot of people show up. so,
You would
in
think
advance.
that the registration fees are assessed to
That they can store them until.
the company that has.
So pesticide manufacturers register every pesticide used in the state, and the ones that are for ag use, an extra fee is on there for the disposal, and that's how this is paid for. This has been in effect since 1999, early 2000s.
Could you repeat how it's paid for? We were sidebarring here. I know we're not supposed to do
We
that.
register approximately 14,000 pesticides in the state of Arkansas.
Yes, ma'am.
Any pesticide that has an agriculture use to it, those pesticide manufacturers pay an additional fee. And that's how the pesticide collection is paid for. We have a contractor, there's bids for this, and then we announce it, Farm Bureau and the county agents promote it in the counties. There's sign-up sheets ahead of time that are anonymous, and that gives us an idea of how many trucks to have there, what to expect. We've been a little overwhelmed the past couple times. We've had more people show up than we were expecting. So those forms, we really need those forms. So the contractor can have enough truck and manpower there.
Contractors take them to whatever their facility is, incinerator, something.
Correct.
Lawrence County was one of, if not the largest one-day collection we've ever had.
Yeah, so it's a good program and it's
Well, fantastic.
for our personal use. I mean, we taking advantage of it and it's, just keeps your place clean and safe. So I don't think it.
Are these contractors in state? Or are they normally out of state? Our sidebar conversation was if they had us, like, if we had a central location, say it was Little Rock. And, you know, if we couldn't make one of those counties, we were closer to Little Rock, we could just take them.
They're out of state, they're out of Texas.
Okay.
And so they take the chemicals back to East Texas.
Yes, ma'am.
We talked about not wanting to have them on the roads, depending on what they are, and then storage here would be an issue.
And we have to scout locations for these setups, because every now and then we get more than we can take that day, and we're able to secure it, and they're able to get more trucks and people in. And that's also why we talked about satellite locations for some of the heavier farming areas in the state. Because as we start moving northwest, we don't pick up near as much as we do in eastern Arkansas.
Out of curiosity, what is most of it? Is it mostly clay-based stuff that's just gone bad and gotten hard? Or do we have drums of old DDT that we found in Grandpa's barn that we said,
Some of it, we don't know what it is. The containers are so degraded, and Brandy may have a better idea. We actually have a ton of pictures. I guess it's the next meeting. I can bring y'all a lot of pictures. We've gone in and taken out a whole barn before. And
What
the
is-
levels of soil, it's Brandy, what's some common things
In
you
the
see?
beginning, it was a lot of old and outdated, and we still get some, but a large percentage is just leftover, unused, open containers. A lot of the bulk, mini bulk totes is what we're getting in. Some 2.5, some pallets that are just old, expired or not. They don't.
The pictures from the early collections are interesting.
What is the process of like, when they dispose, like, do they just put it in a barrel and pump it in the truck? Or how does it?
For most, they repack in the drums and then they
They
put
put
them
it
on
in,
an
then they
18
pump it.
ship them back, and then they combine and incinerate there in Texas.
Let's shift from all the old unidentified rusted out containers to more modern is an indication that the program's working. A lot of that old stuff's already cycled out.
that was sort of my question.
Okay. It's
It's
one of
stuff that we're buying now that's gone bad or we don't use anymore, or
Like,
somebody said, I'm not growing cotton anymore. I don't need any of this,
Correct.
whatever.
And the program, just to educate, I'm standing up here, it originally was for farmers only. The Abandoned Pesticide Advisory Board, several years back, decided to open up commercial applicators also, because a lot of them were buying pesticides on behalf of the farmers. So the program expanded.
What about, co-op and retailers that are no longer in business?
If they were ever licensed as a commercial or private applicator, then yes. But when somebody shows up, we technically don't have a way to verify these things. That's something we're keeping an eye on closely. We have to change the way we, I guess, handle and dispose of this moving forward if we start getting overwhelmed. But right now, pretty much if somebody shows up with an agriculture chemical, as long as we're able to take it, we will.
That's good.
Yeah, I think we want to, man.
Yes.
Correct.
So you said the fee that, supported the program was paid by agricultural. What about the landscape business, herbicides, pesticides that are used?
Some of those products that have dual labels, they can be used in agriculture or landscape ornamental vegetation management, they do pay the fee because they are welcome to bring those too.
Anything else?
Thank you, Susan.
Thank you.
Okay, the next thing, I guess, on the agenda, we've got, Bureau of Standard violations, Nick, that's open.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You have in front of you the document 5A. Document 5A is just a summary of all the violations for the current quarter. And for the current quarter, we had 136 civil penalties that were issued. Group them according to the violation, and we will take the votes by the group. Attachment 1 has several tables in it, and each one of the tables is basically summarizing what kind of business it is, what was the civil penalty for, date of inspection, so on and so forth. So in attachment 1, we have 14 violations for expired or no decals. Out of 14, 13 are first offenses, and there is 1 second offense. Do you have any questions on the?
What's the action of the board on the 14, offenses for expired or no decal?
Maybe we approve them. Yeah, second.
Moved by Mr. Meyer, second by Mr. Miles to approve, the 14, expired or no decal penalties. Those in favor, say when you're saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Attachment 2 has table 3 in it with 7 first offenses for water contamination and gasoline products.
Board's action on the, water contamination.
Maybe we approve them. Second.
Moved by Mr. Meyer, second by Mr. Spencer to, approve the 7 offenses for water, contamination. Those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Attachment 3 has 2 first offenses against registered service companies. These registered service companies are hired by businesses in good faith to do a good job and get their business in compliance. In this case, 2 of the companies failed to do so. And,
Okay. What's the board's action on the, 2 registered service companies?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Reed, second by Mr. Stuckey. Those in favor, signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Attachment 4 has 112 for misrepresentation of pricing. This is a new category for us in this cycle. Out of 112, 76 first offenses, 20 second offenses, 5 third offense, 3 fourth offense, 1 fifth offense, and 1 sixth offense.
Hey, can you
Yeah.
explain to me what these are? It all seems to be the same.
All, he's always.
Same location.
Yes, back in August, we found a huge problem with misrepresentation of pricing. And the way we do these inspections, we randomly show up at the Dollar General and scan 50 items if it's a smaller store, or 100 items if it's a bigger store. And the regulation calls for, to pass this inspection, it has to be 98% accurate. Well, if you go through this list, we found a bunch of stores with 60% accuracy, 50%. So Arkansas consumers are being cheated with the pricing, and a lot of these, and majority of these are overcharges. And this problem is we found in all parts of Arkansas.
So basically, they're changing the price in the computer, but not on the shelf.
Not on the shelf, it's not matching with the scanner.
I got you.
And, yeah, come back, this seems to be the same company. Is it specific to, is that, because that's where we checked, because there was a problem, or is this Or is everyone else in compliance and everyone's
Everybody
in
else,
compliance?
we have done a lot of inspections in Family Dollar, Kroger, Walmart, they are right on the money, but this particular company seems to have a lot of
At
problems.
some point, can the liability go back to the company as a whole instead of just the individual stores?
Tim, you want to?
I mean, is that, if it's a systematic overcharging that a company does, what are the options?
You know, some of the, this is a brand new store. That's not something that is oversight like that. Just open.
$350, like, kind of, like say, hey, we're making more than that.
Yeah, they're
Like,
doing the
every
math.
day.
They're not, they're doing the math and beating the system.
To answer your question, Mr. Reed, I think your question is more appropriate for legal. We try to establish a pattern to issue an alleged violation against this individual store. That was without success. Nick and I discussed the next approach, and I think him and Scott had that conversation. We'll just start sending all penalty letters to corporate. I believe it's in Nashville, Tennessee. Those were received. And I could elaborate further, but I don't want to speak too freely without somebody giving me.
Just nothing to add on to that. We've also contacted the Attorney General's office because there are limitations baked into what we can do, both as department staff and as the plan board, in terms of maximum civil penalties or what type of things we can do to deter these type of violations. The AG's office has the authority to handle certain laws involving consumer protection, including things like the Deceptive Trade Practices Act. I know that staff have done research on similar stores in other states. This is a problem that's going on in other states as well. And that was another reason to engage Attorney General, was because they involve themselves and take the lead on that type of thing. So there are multiple state agencies looking at this issue.
Is there, for our part, this is what we can do. Has there been a response to those other state agencies? But we're gonna do our part and let them work through it, but
Well, yeah.
I'm assuming
It-
their
it's-
corporate legal team is responded and worked with the state.
Yeah, and as they indicate, this is a relatively new issue for us, and so it's an even newer issue for the Attorney General's office. Also, given that there's about to be a transition to a new Attorney General, then there's probably some revisiting that'll need to be done so that any new staff or anything like that will be able to get a feel for what's going on in the particular situation.
I see one of my local stores on there and I'm really not that surprised, and I don't want to divulge all my shopping habits and preferences. But I will say this, in my experience, this is probably not nefarious on their part. They had everything went from $1 to $1.25 or $1.58. And nobody changed the labels because they'll have stuff jammed into the aisles and, so we'll see if your letters get some new labels put on or not, or I don't know. I'm all for finding them though.
So we continue to go to these stores even as we speak, and I can say that we don't see any.
It's not this. Well,
We may see this again.
I move we approve these.
I'll second that.
Mr. Meyer, second by Mr. Stuckey to approve the violation for misrepresentation of pricing. All those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Okay, attachment 5 has only one post offense for a sample that did not meet the distillation endpoint temperature.
Board's action.
Is this, Nick, is this related to the issue we've had before?
No, that
No,
was
that
Flashpoint.
was Flashpoint for these.
Yes.
Oh, Move we approve it.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Myers, second by Mr. Miles to approve the distillation influence temperature violations. Those in favor, signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carried.
Attachment 6, we don't need to take a vote, it's just an information, how much civil penalty has been assessed since fiscal year 2016 and 23. And how much is due? And there's a graph, that shows you what the amounts are.
Nick, what's the difference in 2020 and 2022? Obviously, we had a lot more generally discussed. Anything in particular? Or-
In 2020, we focused our inspections on decals, and we found a lot of businesses didn't do what they were supposed to do. So those were.
And 22 the same?
22, I think it's combination of that and flash point.
Okay.
On these still owed balances, obviously going back to 16, that isn't too much, but say in 20 and 21. The people that still owe them, are they still operating?
Yes.
And so next time they want to get approved to continue operating, do they have to satisfy the balances before we?
Don't believe so. I think these, after a certain point, these amounts are. We refer them to.
Yes, we actually, as we have we have
Okay.
collections firm, and so at a certain point, at a certain kind of time of non-payment. We're bringing collection.
Thank you, Nick. Any more questions or comments? Or Nick on the bureau?
Well, I have one more. Attachment 5B. Yes.
Yeah,
Attachment
yeah.
5B, it's a memo requesting. From the office to waive the civil penalty. On case numbers, BS 22016 and BS 220. These violations occurred back in March, the letters were sent. And with Pennington Corporation, they never received these letters. Apparently, the mailman delivered to a different address right next door. The person at the next next door business signed the certified mail and sent, so we were assuming that Mr. Pennington got these letters, but he never received these letters, and I got a call a few days ago. Requesting to waive these civil penalties because he did not get a chance to come to our meeting back in June or July. And I don't have any problem waiving these civil penalties, and my recommendation, they have been in good standing with our office. So I recommend we waive those two violations back from June.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Miles, second by Mr. Meyer to waive the civil penalty for these two case files. Any discussion or comments?
So he says he does not have an employee named Don Morrison, but then he says he does, so like how? do they-
No, the next door place has
Okay.
an employee
I got
named Donna Morrison, I think is what he said.
Yeah, confusing wording. yeah.
But, yeah. Parks and Mountain View doesn't have anything to do with this. Does it?
Any more discussion?
You see that on your settlement stuff? I guess it probably just didn't get replaced, but it's got something about Harps in Mountain View, and I think this was in Arkansas City. I don't think. He hadn't signed it, so it's probably no big deal. In your red writing, it says Harps agrees to the following, but really it's everything else is Cypress Bend chips. Yeah, I'm just saying, it's probably a cut and, when
Yes.
we cut and pasted it.
Yeah, I don't think there's any,
No, yeah, it doesn't matter.
I don't think there's anything to do, but yeah, that may be a typo. We're gonna. The motion is to waive the civil penalties. All those in favor? Opposed? Motion carried. Thank you. Okay. That gets us down to, Jason Gee's requested to address the board. I think he was here last meeting and like to follow up comments, so we, allowed some time for him to address the board. Jason, if you're ready.
Well, I heard anything said my little bit. Appreciate, number one, the board allowing me the ability to come up here and address some things that definitely affect my area and my farm. I've got a little bit of information here. I'm not gonna spend a lot of time on it, but if you want to pass some of that around, it's got to do with the number of complaints from the year 2000 to the year 22 on just some products that I thought about, that some of them are certainly relative to me. But before we get into that, I came in the summertime, recognizing that, I was going to be affected by dicamba again. The history of my farm, I've been growing non-GMO crops, both corn and soybeans, for at least 10 years. Brandon Stevens is with me in the back. He's been doing the same thing. Pete Moore's in the back here. They've been growing other crops. They're not necessarily non-GMO, but they're not all about dicamba either. And so we're all affected at some large degree. One of the reasons it affects us to such a big degree is the corn and the beans are tied together. When I start having to make different decisions on beans, I have to give up my corn. But the reason this year stands out so harshly is that, number one, it was a harsh growing season. Super hot, super dry. A lot of my acres are flood irrigated, big rice flats. And as we went into the irrigation season, guys would not adhere to or follow any kind of direction that this board's given. And so they were spraying in July and August. So when we were watering beans in these big flats, instead of these beans growing, they were shrinking. It do this. And once you open that canopy up in that flat, then I start drowning beans. And so then the yield problems are amplified. And that's, it's just not acceptable. It's something that's got to be addressed. I do have a few questions. You don't necessarily have to answer them today, but I think they're definitely worth asking. You can look on that information and see the sheer volume of complaints, particularly since 2017 on dicamba, and the numbers are approaching, close to a total of 2,300 with 1,719 confirmed dicamba complaints. That's a big number. I'll argue the only reason those numbers are going down is growers are either planting defensively, or they're a little flustered with the board and not feeling that they're getting any action, that's going to protect them. I can't speak for everyone in that regard. I do appreciate the board addressing a little bit about how the $25,000 tool has been utilized. I overheard some of that talk today, but I would also like to know a total number of times that's been issued. How many times has it been paid? When somebody contests a violation, what happens then? How long is that process? How do we speed that up? How do we make it more visible where the guys that are willing to step outside the boundaries of the law, how can we put them back within the boundaries of the law? How do we fix those problems? Another thing I would like to ask is how many unannounced inspections are occurring versus announced inspections? Are the inspectors, are they working 7 days a week during the growing season? Are you rotating them in and out? Are you stopping spray rigs and probing tanks, particularly in July and August? I think there's just lots of those kind of questions. You know, how are you monitoring? How are you protecting the people that plant non-dicamba crops? Well, the vast majority of folks feel like nothing's being done. I'm not saying that that's necessarily the case, but that is the perception on the street. I do know for a fact July and August applications were being made. I would like to know how that was handled. I know specifically who called in the August applications that were being made. You're spraying dicamba on August 23rd. You're on a state highway, you're in blatant violation of every law that's on the books regarding the dicamba. That kind of stuff's got to stop. The cost to us is just great. I feel this way. I hate that I feel this way, but I feel like dicamba has a monopoly over the soybean growing system, and a lot of that monopolies, for lack of a better way to phrase it, it's driven by the regulatory body, and I think some of that needs to change. That product is an all or nothing technology, and we're in a very diverse state. And I think that diversity needs to be protected. A lot of these growers are claiming because they bought the seed, they've got a right to spray dicamba, but that's not how that works. If it won't stay in the field, they don't have that right. What about the other grower's right? What about an enlist grower? What about his right? He has the same rights. I don't care if you're a homeowner, a gardener, a forester, you have the same rights equally to them. We need to address this situation. One of the reasons I printed this out, one of the reasons I wanted to look at it. I farm in both Poinsett counties, and they are two of the most highly regulated counties in the state. If you look at the 2,4-D complaints in 2006, you had 102 confirmed complaints. 2,4-D, all those complaints, or the bulk majority of them, came from east of the ridge that was cotton, and they were right. I'm not contesting that they're not right in those complaints, but if you look at what happened in 2007. It dropped down to 3 confirmed complaints. Why did that change? I know why it changed. I think a lot of y'all sitting at that table know why it changed. Banned 2,4-D and crossed from Poinsett County to the rice farm. Wouldn't let him have it anymore. And it solved the problem. You come to 2017, and that's when all the dicamba complaints start, and they never quit. All the way up to this point here today, to the point we're at today. Why are we not protecting the diversity of the state? Why are we letting the few dictate how everything else is done? These guys have options. I'm pretty well connected to the seed industry. There's very, very good varieties that are in Enlist, that are in Liberty. There's plenty of seed supply out there today for them to do something different. I beg for you to make some decisions and force these guys to do something different. There's rampant spraying of dicamba when they know they can't keep it in the field. It's got to stop. The cost to a lot of us are great. In some instances, it's even putting some growers out of business. And they're not going to jump on that train. I don't have any business telling any one of you sitting at that table what to do on your farm. I just don't. I don't have that business. But you really don't have any business telling me what I have to plant either. And that's kind of the way this technology's being spun, and it's really, we're being forced into that, and there are options there. It's just a situation that I'd like to see addressed. I'm not sure what the proper procedure is in petitioning the board for a rule change, but I'd love to see that happen. I'd love to see dicamba be banned for in-crop use. They're not going to keep it in the field. I'd love to see the enforcement ramped up in the areas that they're going to be spraying hot and heavy. I'd love to see the inspectors rotate in and out where there's somebody on the ground all the time. Stop these sprayers. See what's in them, see what they're doing. Got a history of doing that in Poinsett County, going back all the way to the Queen Florac days. You did that hot and heavy. Every time an airplane landed on the strip, they were checking to see if it was fast. I still abide by those. I have to abide by the facet regulations, I have to abide by the 2,4-D regulation. Gentlemen, we need some help. We're begging you for some help. Give us some relief. Let these guys learn to manage these pigweeds another way. The tools are there, they can do it. You know, again, I'll leave it at that. I'll make it short and sweet, but I would ask if you consider banning dicamba in season for the 2023 crop year. Don't allow it to be sprayed after April 15th. I'll stand up here and tell you that. I do not want any dicamba application made in my area, period. You know, I'll leave that with you.
Thank you, Jason. Anybody got any questions or comments for Jason?
Mr. Chairman, this is Bruce, and Jason has got a legitimate complaint, and we need to listen and try to do something about it. If they're still bringing after the past due date, there needs to be something major done about it. It's just rubbing what decisions we've made right in our face. Don't care what we're gonna make, what kind of decision we're gonna make.
No, I think you're right, Mr. Alford. I mean, like, you know, I'd like to thank Jason for coming and sharing his concerns. I think they are legitimate. I think there's a good number of people in the state that have the same experience that Jason has, and it's not right. I think the way dicamba has been handled in the state, we're putting people in a bad situation. We've been at this for 5 years now. Compliance is the issue. Don't know which way we're supposed to go. Those blatant violations. How do we stop them and handle them? We haven't been able to do it yet. I don't have the answer today. I think we need to plant board's not the Arkansas State Police, and it's almost what you need to handle those kind of things.
I guess the issue I see is we're having trouble enforcing the laws on the books. And I guess I have somewhat of a legal background. That's got to be taken care of before any further steps are taken.
Yeah, compliance for what we already have is.
Because it's just going to make, right now, it's going to make more people criminals, is all that a digital restriction would do.
Am I looking at this correctly, that in 22, there were more confirmed glyphosate cases than dicamba? I mean, like double them, the ones 214?
Yeah, but, you know.
We had gone through the 22.
They're not all.
Okay.
Okay.
There's still a lot.
That's what I got you.
Yeah, I mean, just Susie, if you can help.
Do we have
comment from
an
an
estimate
enforcement-
of any kind of what they may be by the end of the year?
No. Some of the case files are still being investigated by the field staff for
Gotcha.
22. That's just what we have so far. And we've got a ton of cases from 22 that aren't reviewed yet.
Of the 201 that are alleged, how many are closed? One way or the other? How many are finished? We're not investigating anything anymore.
I can get that for you. Give me about 5 minutes.
You know, I don't know if that's 2 out of 10. Or if that's 2 out of 100.
So far, we've got, this end of November,
Mhm.
and I'm looking at, we turn into the Bureau of Legislative Research every month. With 201 alleged,
Right.
we had received 146 of those from the field staff.
Mm-hmm.
12 of those have been closed, and none of those 12 resulted in a violation today.
Okay.
Here, I can actually give you all a copy of this. This is the dicamba report that goes back years. It lays out where we found some violations.
So of the 201, 146 were initiated by field staff. That means 55.
No, that's what we received in the office from the field staff. Those were all complainants.
Okay, so the difference in 146 and 201 is 55. And what are those 55 cases?
Those 55 are still with, Davenport's field staff.
Oh, they just hadn't turned them in. Those
Yes,
weren't-
they're still-
I follow.
The field staff,
They weren't initiated. I follow.
it's 201 initiated, dicamba, of the 418 total that we have. And the 156 is what Davenport's field staff has already completed. And the rest of them are still with the field staff.
We've only gone 12, so.
That's what, so
12
that's
146.
that's 2 cases of 12. Is what you're telling me. You're telling me you've got 12 cases closed, correct?
Yes,
And so of those 12 cases, 2 of them are confirmed as dicamba.
as the symptoms being associated with dicamba, yes.
So about 16%, right?
I'm just saying it's 2 out of 12.
We will know more on those in the coming months.
And you've got
Time of year.
And you've got 55 complaints that you know of that the field staff has not even turned into y'all to investigate.
Now, what happens? The complainant called us, we issue what we call a DP1 request for investigation. Those get sent to Davenport's field staff. The field staff starts the investigation. And at this point, David, you correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of it is with growers not having produced the records yet. Things like that.
And field staff is not just assigned to pesticide investigator, they work all programs.
I just think I misunderstood you at first. I thought you said 146 were field staff initiated cases that
No,
they
sir.
went out
No,
and
sir.
doing violations.
No, sir.
Okay.
I guess I have a question. What enforcement mechanisms are in place to assure that the generic dicamba is not sprayed after the cutoff date? I mean, I feel in my area that is a large problem and where a lot of this is coming from. Is there not the branded products? I mean, is there any? What, first off, with all the truck patch people selling chemicals all over the country, how do we know what's coming into the state? And then how do we know what an individual, because if an individual is buying in January that farms 1,000 acres, 10 totes of dicamba, we obviously, is there a way to connect all that? Because I mean, I think that is, I'm telling you, a large percentage of this drift is from a generic product.
What we do is when we go out, we start investigating, we take pictures, we look at symptomology. If we can track a source of the pesticide, at that point, we start pulling records for those individuals, those farmers, those applicators. The issue, and Scott can speak to this, we are having trouble tracking. So, and we do random records checks to see what's being sold and purchased, but tying what was actually sprayed in the field and what's drifted is near impossible for us. And our lab cannot different if we submit a sample, we just know it's not
Which
dicamba.
there's been talk about putting markers.
Yeah,
There
years
are no
ago.
markers there. There has been that
Yeah.
discussion.
I mean, how do we at least get some simple program where we know what dicamba is coming into the state, what formulations it is? Is there any?
That's a national problem with things way beyond dicamba.
Yeah.
You've got internet sales.
Yes.
Yeah.
Federal government, USDA, EPA, they can't even track it,
And that's what, is there any mechanism
not to my knowledge. that-
with a big penalty if you bring something in that isn't ran through some sort of database?
We would either have to catch them with that in their possession or catch them in act, and that's a very difficult.
I mean, is there an ability to come up with that system?
In 2018, the board did ask that
Yeah.
for sales records, but I don't know if it ever went beyond discussion.
I mean, that surely would help, but in certain parts of our state, you've got people that are farming in bordering
Yeah.
states, and they can sure go buy it from somebody across
But
the state
technically,
line.
they're not supposed to bring.
They're
it
not
into
supposed to be.
the
You're
state, especially
absolutely,
if you had some form of registration.
but they're not
for
supposed to
dicamba.
spray generic
Yes.
dicamba.
Yes,
either.
absolutely.
I mean, it's been, it's a kind of a square peg round hole. I mean, it just, you
And at some point, I think we have had presentations in the past with U of A comparing all the various dicamba, 4D. volatility. I don't remember what exactly that entailed because it's been years ago.
But there is some reduced volatility with versus, I mean, I know it's not,
After the
I think
first
up
U of
to
A.
yes.
I mean, I think, yeah, I mean, I think.
And that's why we passed this cutoff date. But that's the thing, if you're spraying generics out to that point, you negate not doing it. And so, and I think that is as big of a problem as anything.
I think it's a huge problem.
And the entire regulation of the herbicide.
Yes, but my thoughts are, we get the generic spraying under control. And we get the spraying after the cutoff date under control. And I don't know, how do we get to that point?
Don't have that, the answer, I don't know. There's, yeah, I don't know that there is. The industry hasn't had the answer.
Can I make a quick comment?
Yes.
Go ahead, Dave.
I witnessed the spraying on August 23rd, and it was in Ingenia. And there was a witness with me. The tender truck was loaded with Ingenia. The university data, after so many hours, the volatility is the same. You know, when you're spraying late, it's not mattering. You know, that's a fight, that's false. That information is not correct that you're being fed. There's good university data that's after so many hours, once you're into those hot summertime weather conditions, the volatility is equal. I can't quote the exact hours, but I could get you there.
Those blatant egregious violations, I mean, I don't, if we could, one, catch them, two, penalize them, maybe we would get some compliance. You know, they hadn't worked up till today. So I make sure I understand it. I think the state's just in a bad, the whole industry in a bad situation. So that would be a problem. The product problem has been.
One more comment. Why did the 2,4-D ruling work and you think the Doc Campbell went on? The data's clear in front of you. 2006 to 2007, all that was the ruling passed by the board. Went away. I think that won't work with that.
I can comment on that, but this will just be pure speculation. But I feel like I do need to speak up. My feeling is that there has been a shift in the attitude and the position of the farmers from then until now. I think you had, in those days, you had much more compliance-oriented farmers. And I think what we have seen today is they've lawyered up. In those days, they would comply. In those days, they would respond to regulatory action. Nowadays, we currently have 100+ cases that are represented by lawyers. A lot of them are egregious. And the first thing the lawyers do is they do not encourage their client to come to an informal hearing with us and try to resolve this, because that does not involve attorneys. What they've done is they want a hearing. They want to come straight to the board for a hearing. So that leaves us in a position to, through our attorneys, we negotiate with these attorneys, or we bring 100 hearings to you. I mean, you're looking at 2 hearings a week for a year. And I don't think there's a member of this board that has the time to do that. So through this, a huge log jam has been created. We have meetings scheduled for the next 2 weeks with attorneys to see if we can move these things, see if we can figure out how to resolve them. But what that means is that means coming back of civil penalties of egregious violations that we've had to negotiate lower, which is why the $20,000 civil penalty has not had a huge impact. And then if we do the hearings and the alleged violators don't like the ruling on the board, they will appeal it to court. We have one case from, I don't remember the exact case, but it's just now going before court, and it's been in the process for 6 or 8 years. So that's been our struggle here. Also had farmers that have threatened our inspectors. I don't recall ever hearing stories from '06 and back in the 2000s, even back in the boll weevil days. Farmers actually telling our inspectors, get off this farm or we're gonna hurt you right now. So has impacted our program as far as spot checking, going out in the field, stopping a rig, taking a sample. I mean, we've had multiple inspectors. We've had them run off the road. We've had female inspectors surrounded by cars and pulled over and threatened.
No, a lot of state police, they won't tolerate that. I've had that.
I agree with you, but they can't be,
Make that phone call.
they can't be with us every time.
They can when something like that's going on, I know.
So again, we have adjusted our program to do the best we can based on the security situation, based on resources. We got 29 inspectors out there. We have uncooperative violators. They don't want to give us records. Call my lawyer. I mean, we pass these cases together the best we can. And we've brought a bunch of cases to resolution, and we still be in the pipeline, but it's been a very, very difficult, overwhelming situation. And we're not the only state. I can bring my counterparts in here from other states that are seeing the exact same thing.
You know, and I think it's a disregard for respect for your neighbor and respect for authority, and we're dealing with something that we haven't been able to regulate since it came to state. I don't know where we go from here. We've tried a bunch of different ways, and
To some level, this type of regulatory oversight requires a level of cooperation from the regulated community. And when there's a large group that decide we don't want to be regulated by you, it's very, very difficult for you.
that's right, Scott.
Like, I appreciate everything that's been said, but I have to make one comment just so we don't forget. You know, it's not just the violators that are part of the problem. We're seeing damage, first on our crops. We're seeing damage this past year, which was kind of a perfect scenario with the temperatures and the weather in general. This year was a bad year for this type of situation, but we were seeing crop damage 1st of June, which is within the spray days. So, you know, other than the fact that maybe it was too warm that day, or the moisture in the air was wrong or high, in general, it might not have been a necessarily illegal application. But because of the volatility and the changes in the atmospheric conditions and what the inspectors call the atmospheric load, we were seeing damage in early June, and the spray cutoff wasn't until later that month. So it's not just the violators that's causing the problem. The problem is there regardless, just because of the volatility of the herbicide.
No, that's legal applications have caused damage too. I think I personally experienced them. It's in my opinion, it's a product problem we haven't been able to solve since it came to state. So, any comments or thoughts or any action from the board on dicamba or Jason comments? That I wish, yeah.
Y'all want me to pull in and that was requested, or we got you regarding the research on the old 240 or the old dicamba versus the new dicamba?
Right, so I think we've seen it, unless the other board members want to see it. No action, no comments, but I think we'll move on to it. I think it's good. Continue to have and monitor the state and, think maybe we'll see some different, outcomes this coming growing season. We haven't yet. Okay, the business, we can move on. Hey, Scott, did you have?
Sir.
Did you have something, another business for?
I do have a couple of items. The first one, is Michael is gonna update the board on the food labeling legislation. You good to go there, Mike?
You mean the food labeling, recent case?
Correct.
Morning, everybody. In September of this year, there was a case in the Eastern District Federal Court here in Arkansas. It was Turtle Island Foods, v. Soma. There was a law passed regarding truth in labeling in 2019. In that law, it had certain provisions about what type of words you could and couldn't use, in particular, regarding rice and meats. It was particularly focused on using like plant-based meat. The Plant Division's Bureau of Standards was tasked with enforcing this law. There was litigation in federal court, and the decision recently came down and struck down that law as unconstitutional. Just without going into the depths of the case, it was Turtle Foods specializes in Tofurkey, and they wanted to be able to use terms like plant-based meat or hams and things like that. Long story short, the federal court found that particular application to be or unconstitutional. Also, probably of some notes is at least some members of this board is that law also included restrictions on labeling for rice products. That was not part of the litigation. So while there may be implications for rice labeling in the future, it hasn't necessarily been ruled unconstitutional, and that's something we're currently looking at now to see if there are any rules or anything like that may be impacted in terms of the labeling of rice. If there are any questions on that, I'm happy to answer it, but that's just kind of an update as to the recent developments.
Question for Michael on the new labeling. Thank you, Michael.
Mr. Chairman, for update, Mr. Wade's going to give you guys an update on the hemp rules y'all passed back.
Go ahead, Wade. Sorry.
Okay.
Mr. Stuck, you gotta get out of here and we gotta keep him around. Keep
I'll be
him
quick.
quiet.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Just want to give you an update on the hemp rule that you approved earlier. As you'll recall, a few years back, the Farm Bill allowed states to start hemp programs as pilot research programs, and that was under the 2014 Farm Bill, and then the 2018 Farm Bill allowed states to move hemp into purely an agricultural product. That's still heavily regulated because, of course, if you're just 0.1% off in the THC content of cannabis, you're not growing hemp, you're growing marijuana. So it's still heavily regulated. And the change in state law required you to promulgate some new rules. So you did that. You approved the rules that the staff had drafted for you. Went through the promulgation process, and just before we were set to have those presented to the legislature for their approval, we started hearing from some representatives of the hemp community with some concerns about the language in the rules. So we met with them, and those meetings included representatives from the governor's office and the attorney general's office as well. we agreed tentatively to some changes that would more closely track the language in the law. And we thought that would be okay, but the more we looked at the changes that we agreed to, we decided that those would be what would be called substantive changes. In other words, it would change the nature of the program. And it's primarily regarding processing and whether the law gives you and the department any authority over hemp processing. And so that changes the whole nature of the program if you don't have that authority. So with that, that requires the rule to be brought back to you for you to determine what to do with the rule. And we can either present that rule to you as we've tentatively agreed to amend it at some point, or knowing that there's a legislative session coming up, good chance that there may be some new legislation introduced regarding that, and maybe we'll resolve the conflict between the language and the law. So you can either, we can either set that rule for you to review, or you can just sort of take a wait and see approach and see what comes out of the legislation. And the issue is there's one part in the law where it says nothing in the law gives the plant board the authority to regulate hemp processing practices or methodology. But then later, where it says what the prohibited acts are under the law, it says it's unlawful to process hemp in any manner inconsistent with the law or with plant board rules. So one part seems to indicate no jurisdiction, another part does indicate jurisdiction. And so it's difficult sometimes for a regulatory agency to try to figure out where their jurisdiction ends. But if you are stuck with trying to figure out where your jurisdiction actually begins, that's so it's really your call. We can present the changes that we have tentatively agreed to in the rule, let you look at those and decide whether you want to go forward, or we can just kind of wait and see what happens with the legislature and then go. So that's kind of where we are, Mr. Chairman.
Do you think we'll have an idea by the next meeting where the legislature might fall?
I think by next meeting, we'll know whether legislation has been introduced. But, just because a bill is introduced, it can look substantially different from the time it's introduced until the time it actually becomes law. So I think we'll have clearer direction if we took the wait and see approach. My fear now is if we tried to promulgate a rule, you got two problems. One, getting a rule done during legislative session is they got other things on their mind. And two, we might wind up with a rule that then conflicts with whatever the new law says.
Questions, comments, or weigh on him? I think, from my opinion, you need to let the legislature sort out where they're going to be on the public spending time on anything we don't know what we're doing.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir. I was gonna give a quick update on our H2A inspection program. Mr. Stuckey, if you need to go, I can catch you. I probably need to sign the minutes though.
From last asking.
Well, I'll just jump right in while you're doing that. This won't take long. So a year or so ago, we started helping Arkansas Department of Workforce Services with some of their inspections. We were doing a home inspection for the H2A migrant workers they were bringing in. As that has evolved, we have ended up signing an MOA between us, Department of Ag, Department of Workforce Services, and Arkansas Department of Labor and Licensing associated with H2A migrant worker program. Our role pretty much is just inspections. We do the housing inspection for them. To date, we did a total of 343 farms for them. We have started building a database. We've received information from Workforce Services that has about 535 farms in it. We anticipate it'll be an annual inspection number. It'll grow a little bit. There will be some new applications come in each year. Our goal is, once we get through year one and get our handle on it, is we'll maintain a database of current applicators or applications, and we'll do our best to keep their inspections current. That way, when they submit their applications to the workforce services, it's just another box that's checked, and they can move through it, hopefully in a much speedier fashion. So that's what we're doing. We've had real good success at it. Inspectors have done a really good job with it. Staff downstairs have done a really good job managing the data. And I think we've done a great job with it, and we'll be doing that going forward. If anybody has any.
I want to thank y'all for taking this on, because it's made a big difference. I mean, that's been the big holdup on our visas is the housing inspections, and they just obviously could not handle it.
Well, we do not live in a perfect world. Certainly here, we don't, but our goal is to get it as close as we can to where each year when you submit your paperwork, your inspection's done, it's already in there, it's in the system, that box is already checked for.
You know, I think we commend our staff and.
Great job, David and his guys, doing a great job with it, and girls. It's a good program.
Scott, any other business to come before the board today? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Need to set the day of the next meeting. Looking at March, anybody have any conflicts that they know they can't make?
I think the 15th is not good for this room. Other than that, as far as the room schedule goes, I think we're open.
About that second week of March, the 7th or the 9th.
I'll be at the commodity class.
6, 7, and 8, I'm probably tied up, but the end of that week's probably easier.
Well, how about the 3rd week period?
Well, that's what is bad for them, or at least the 15th.
The 15th, 14th, 16th.
I'm probably gone all of that, but I can call in.
Think you could get.
I mean, I hope I can. I might can do that too. If we need to do that, I could probably do it Zoom.
First week on. For you guys, this first or the second or third week would be any different or?
Third's good for me.
Third's good.
Whatever, that's spring break for my kids in Mississippi and. No big deal.
Yeah. Okay, well, no.
So, but I, like I say, I can call in.
So what's the 9th look like for everybody?
That's good for me, so bad for,
Yeah.
can you call in on the 9th? Or
I
no?
need to have my schedule while I'm there. What?
It's good for me.
Can we look at the 9th and let me figure out
Well, yeah, not.
what time? 9 o'clock,
9:30.
9 to 12, that range.
Yeah, we could work. Well, let's just set it tentatively for the Thursday, March 9th at 9:30, if that's agreeable with everyone. Sounds good. Now I entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. Second.
Thank you, guys. Yeah, no problem.
Recording stopped.
Well, we didn't accomplish nothing on that, but we did discuss it. That's more what we have been doing.